Today we're going to be uppotting a fruit tree, applying our top 5 helpful tips to making sure you succeed in transplanting your fruit tree from a smaller container to a larger container. And today we are lucky to be featuring Enoch Graham of The Urban Gardener, who, when we met 2 years ago, had only 8,000 subscribers, and we celebrated that together. 1,000, it was great. And as of yesterday or today?
Yesterday.
As of yesterday, he just crossed the 10,000 subscriber mark, which is huge.
Huge.
And I'm hoping with your support that you'll continue to support our gardening community and our friend by visiting The Urban Gardener and subscribing and clicking the push bell notification to be informed as soon as the educational lessons are made available. And it makes such a huge difference in growing our gardening community and steering us in the direction in our education that we're offering you. The cool thing is Enoch and I, for the last couple of years, have had a lot of collaborations with other people as well, and mutual friends. One being is Kay Cottrell, who's an actress, who together, the two of you were also on the Nick Federoff radio show called
Things Green. Yeah,
Things Green.
That was a really great experience to get to hang out with Nick and Kay and talk on the radio as well too. Yeah,
that's fantastic. And then the legend, who I only got to meet once, is John Kohler of growingyourgreens.com. YouTube sensation, over 800,000 subscribers, over 100 million views. And
John's like the grandfather of this whole gardening community here on YouTube, and he's a really great guy, a really good friend. And I've been really fortunate enough to be able to hang out and do some really cool, fun gardening content and creation with John. He's a really great guy, as well as Kay Cottrell and Nick and all of them too. It's really great to have those sort of connections with each other, you know, in the gardening community. Supporting each other is just so important, here in the gardening community. That's why I'm so glad to be here with you today, Charles.
That's awesome. And I know you're on the Urban Garden show. I know I've had one lucky experience, you know, in doing an educational lesson with John Kohler, but you've got like what, 2, 3?
I think I've probably done about 5 or 6 now, I think.
5 or 6.
With John from my channel, as well as getting the opportunity to film with him. That was one of the first things I did with John, was back at the Heirloom Expo, getting to be able to film him do his tour of the expo. That was what kind of really started our relationship there. But from there, we've done several different things together, and he's really fun to get together. And as you've seen on his videos, he's just one of those great personalities.
It really
in the
is.
gardening community.
That's awesome. So in this lesson, Enoch and I are going to share our top 5 helpful tips, which include when is the best time of the year to be uppotting your fruit trees. Also, what is the best soil medium to be using for your potted plants. We're also going to be discussing the coiled root issue that is for sure happening in here, as this plant's been in the same container for at least 2 to 3 years, and it's a very tiny container relative to the size of the tree, and we're going to have to deal with the coiled root once we pull it out. And then fourthly, we're going to be discussing whitewashing, and last, we're going to be concluding with where to store the plant for the short term to maximize the success and health and life of this newest addition to our backyard orchard.
So Charles, when is the best time of year to pot this up?
So the best time to be uppotting your plants is going to be similar to the best time to also be pruning your trees, which is late winter. After the last chance of frost is past your grow zone, so it's different depending on where you are in the country or where you are in the world. But you want to make sure the last chance of frost is passed, so the plant's not dealing with that stress. But ideally before the plant begins to go into its growth mode, whether it's blooming and then pushing out the shoots. So for us here in Los Angeles, that window is typically early February through the month of February, no later than early March. It's kind of like February is that month, as our last chance of frost is that last week of January. So February for us is truly the beginning of spring. So February is the time to be doing all of these things.
For you guys.
Yeah, we luck out over here. So being that you're in Southern Oregon, in your grow zone, how soon can you start your spring plantings?
Yeah, so for us in Southern Oregon, unlike you guys here in Southern California who have it all so lucky being able to start so early, Our last frost is around mid-May.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
It is a huge difference.
So that being the case, the best time is going to be, as I explained, it being that we're here in Southern California, is going to be February, ideally.
Yeah.
But here we are now in June, which is probably one of the worst months, as now it's going to have to also combat the 14 hours of daylight and the heat stress and so much more. But this is when we've got the time, and I know if I don't do it now, I probably never will.
This is a special case scenario, right?
And so we're going to be applying these 5 tips to make sure that this plant succeeds, and that's what we're going to do next.
Excellent. So Charles, when it comes to transplanting this apple tree here, what kind of soil would you recommend that we use?
So it's really important to be using a potting mix for your potted plant. And I know it sounds dumb in a way, but I see so many people going to the garden centers and they are picking up potting mixes for their in-ground plants, and also then getting compost and using that for their potted plants too. Like just using the wrong products for the wrong purpose, just because it's on sale, for example.
Right.
But they don't realize what the consequences of making that mistake are. And so it's important to be using the right stuff for the right purpose. And so for our potted plant, we're going to be using a combination of these 3 ingredients that I've got here. 2 of them are mineral based and will not break down and basically, you know, like compost, break down and eventually disintegrate. Yeah. What I'm using here first is perlite. And perlite is just basically this puffed mineral, and it's very porous, it's water absorbent, but it doesn't, and it also allows water to pass very easily through it as well. As you take a look here on the product, you can see that improves drainage, improves aeration, helps to prevent soil compaction, promotes strong root development, has all of this value, perlite. The other product, which is mineral based, not like a compost, will not break down, and is called vermiculite. Kind of looks like fool's gold, and the purpose is very similar to perlite, except it's a little smaller in texture, prevents soil compaction, promotes faster seed germination, used with potting mixes, and that's what we're doing, or garden soils. And so what we're gonna do is mix a 1/3 part vermiculite, 1/3 part perlite, and then I'm gonna be adding a 1/3 part of this sphagnum peat moss. And if you take a look over here, this is just composted peat. And this, unlike compost, which we're gonna see in just a minute that's near you, this stuff doesn't break down very quickly. It breaks down over the course of years. And the benefit is when you add it to your soil medium, as it breaks down, it's not gonna cause the roots to compact upon itself within the potting mix. And it's really important that the potting mix maintains its integrity for many years, like between 3 and 5 years before the next up potting stage. You're not going to be up potting from year to year to year, hopefully, and adding that additional stress to the plant. So this is going to be the mix that it's going to be living in for the next 3 to 5 years, ideally. What you have next to you is another product called Amend, made by Kellogg's. And this here is just compost. And let me just share with you what this product looks like. If we take a look in here, and if you take a look, this here is made out of bark and leaves and manure. And within about 3 to 6 months, this is just going to turn into dust. If we just simply use compost into our pot, then that soil medium, literally, within the next 6 to 9 months, is going to break down almost entirely, and that whole plant structure, the root system, is going to collapse upon itself. So a reason not to be using compost, and a reason to also not be using native soil, is that the native soil is also not going to absorb water as well as these ingredients that we just discussed. The other thing you can do is you can simply just buy a bag of potting mix. And if you want to show what the texture of that looks like, you'll see in there that it's got already added perlite and other and sphagnum moss and other things that are going to last. You can see those little white flakes that are in there, which is added perlite, which is going to help the soil better maintain its integrity for the long term. So we're all just guessing, you know, about 1/3 of each of these 3 parts. I'm adding the sphagnum peat moss. Enix got the vermiculite, now we're just going to be putting the perlite. And that's our homemade potting mix. So before we add the potting mix to the container, and this is just a slightly larger container than the original, I like adding some shards of rock, some clay pots that have broken in the years that I've saved. I like putting that at the bottom, and this is gonna help retain the potting mix from leaking out of these holes with each watering. So we're basically adding pretty much like these drain rocks at the base of the container, like so. And now we're simply going to take this mix that Enoch helped me out with, and we're going to begin to fill up the container. So the next thing we're going to do is correct now the coiled root-bound roots. And that leads me to a question. When going to a nursery, and if budget isn't the issue, would you prefer to buy a smaller young tree, or is it better to get the 20, whatever size gallon giant monster tree so that you can have that giant tree ready to be on your property in the first year?
Well, I think if most people would go out there would want to have that big tree, to have that fruit right off the bat, but I think in my case and my garden and all of that, I'd be looking for the full development of that plant. So I'd probably buy it more younger and actually take the time to take care of it over the years in order to make sure that I'm getting a real full potential from the plant that I want.
That's exactly right. So you want to start off with a younger tree, and the reason you said is because you want to watch it grow, which I think is an excellent, phenomenal reason. And it's one of the reasons that we plant our herbs and vegetables and annuals and enjoy what they have to offer, throughout the growing season. But there's actually a health reason why too, to select the younger fruit tree over the older one, and it's fitting with this potting lesson, is the fact that every time a potted plant graduates to the next container, to the 5-gallon container, to the 10-gallon container, to the 15-gallon container, that person that's up potting it from step to step to step has to correct those coiled roots. Otherwise, the plant can actually kill itself through a phenomenon known as root girdling. As what's going to happen when you take a look at those coiled roots at the bottom is they'll end up spinning upon themselves. And many times, and I've even got to meet some arborist friends over the years, and they visited, local parks such as Magic Mountain, and sometimes these trees topple over, and you see this sometimes happening, with city trees as well. And it's like, how come the roots are just like in one spot? And more likely than not, it's because one, being obviously the concrete, limitation that it's planted in, but the other reason is the plant never had a chance to stretch its roots out from the time that it was young. And because of that mistake coiled root situation at the beginning, it's something that it's going to endure and ultimately shorten its life as a result of. And so it's important to correct the coiled root issues with the plant when up potting it, so that you prevent this issue of root girdling happening within your tree.
So what would be the method, or what would you do in that case in order to give that plant the best chance, if that was the case, that it had some root girdling?
So we're going to correct it by cutting and pruning those coiled roots, and I'm going to teach you how we're going to do that, minimizing the stress of the tree. So let's get started.
Excellent.
So Enoch, I'm going to hold on to the tree trunk while you hopefully tap the pot off, and then let's examine what that root situation looks like.
All
Ready?
Right, let's do that.
So here we go. So this here is demonstrating exactly what I was looking to find, which is a root that's basically coiling itself and ultimately will lead to, you can imagine if it's going to be like this in this position for the life of the tree, let's say 50 years, 100 years, basically wrapping itself and growing, it's basically going to ultimately girdle, and it's going to interfere with the flow of the water and the minerals and the nutrients up and through the entire tree. And you can see that if we pull it, it could otherwise be a pretty long root. but the container actually forced it into this coiled root bound position like so. You can see how tight that was before. What we're going to do now to basically fit this container is we're going to prune the roots, and notice how I say and, we're also going to be pruning the tree. Notice I'm going to cut this like in half. So look at all that root that we just lost. Most people would be devastated thinking we just killed the tree. There's still a ton of roots in here. I've got all of the surface roots, and I've got some of the primary root. There's not just the only one. There's a lot of other roots that are coming and branching off of the...
Won't this now encourage some of these other roots now too in order to start growing?
Absolutely. So now we're going to encourage this root to also, you know, create a more balanced root structure. This one here will continue to flare out, but we got to make sure that it doesn't die. And so what we're going to do to offset that shock is, let me set this now down in the pot it's going to go into, is we're now going to prune. And this is a very important tip. We prune the roots to offset that stress. We got to prune some of the tree. Notice how much tree I'm now going to prune. I'm keeping this branch. I'm keeping that branch. But check out how much tree I'm also pruning. Right there. And now we've also got a smaller tree. So we've offset the shock to the root by balancing that stress to the tree by removing part of the tree. So now it's less roots supporting less of a tree structure, and that'll actually reduce stress and maximize success. Helpful tip number 4 is whitewashing. A lot of professional growers that I've met with over the years would say the day you plant a tree is the day you whitewash with Ivory Organic. And the reason for whitewashing is manifold. We did a lesson on the urban gardener, and I'm actually encouraging all of you guys, if it's already posted, I'll put the link, and if not, I'm actually gonna give you the channel where I encourage all of you guys to subscribe and hit that push bell notification to stay informed of all of his lessons. But we did a top 7 reasons and the benefits that can happen from whitewashing your plants using the Ivory Organic brand products, and not latex and tar-based products that, 1, contaminate your soil, and 2, it'll lead to underlying rot if you're trying to protect. Over here, we've got damaged surfaces as well, which I'm going to share with you in just a moment. But what we're going to do now is this tree trunk is all exposed. As you can see, the canopy one day, hopefully within the next year or 2, is going to develop and shade the underlying tree trunk. But until that happens, we need to protect the tree trunk from the 14 hours of daylight that's going to come through and cause 1st, 2nd, and sometimes even 3rd degree sunburn to that tree trunk. So we're going to whitewash it to protect that. And the other thing too that's happened to this poor apple tree, being that it was neglected behind our wall for many years, is you're going to see that there was girdling damage caused by some type of rodent, whether it be a rat or a mouse. And it's typically a winter phenomenon, being the rodents are hungry for food and nuts, and they don't know where to get their sugars. They'll begin to chew on the bark to get to the underlying cambium layer where all those sugars are, and that basically sustains them through the winter. So this one suffered, you know, unfortunate damage. Luckily, the girdling didn't go all the way around, and that would have definitely killed the plant. So the plant can still heal over these wounds. We're going to seal it and protect beetles and termites from entering those exposed surfaces. And so what we're going to use today is the Ivory Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard protection against damaging summer sunburn, as well as winter sun scald and insects and rodents. And so as we can see, we got rodent issues, and we don't want the insects to enter all of these exposed wood areas as well. So we're using this. The color white is OMRI listed for organic gardening as well, but the color I'm going to be using today is our latest and greatest color, which is the color greige, which I think matches the plant beautifully. And if you can help me with painting the tree trunk and working our way up to the very tip, as there really is no canopy. At the very tip, as we just pruned it, that's an exposed surface again for both beetles and termites to enter, as well as disease. So part of whitewashing and protecting your plant, and that pint-sized can also make up to 5 gallons of a ready-to-use foliar spray that also whitewash the entire structure, including the leaves and stems. So what we're using right now is this already made, ready-to-use spray bottle of the Ivory Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard. And I'm now gonna spray the leaves And you can see the whitewash product on the plant as well. And that's going to help as an anti-transparent, helping with transplant shock, and also keep pests from damaging and injuring the plant as it also heals in this new container. And now finally, helpful tip number 5 is to make sure you store the recently uppotted transplanted tree into a location that's going to offer morning light but afternoon shade for at least the first 10 to 14 days. So what we're going to do is we're going to move this tree right into the canopy of our now 5-in-1 grafted fruit tree, and then this plant will now get the morning light, but as the sun moves across the sky, these branches actually will cast a shade and offer some protection to the plant so that it's not dealing with the full sun, especially for those first 2 weeks as those roots get adjusted and with all that stress that we've already offered it to get acclimated into that new container where it will thrive. It'll actually perform so much better this year after all that we've done for it. And I know there's a lot of you guys also watching with your fig cuttings that you've got for our, I think it was our 4th, if not 5th annual fig cutting giveaway, where we gave away almost 1,000 fig cuttings. And a lot of you guys are already experiencing large fig trees, you know, from those 6-inch cuttings that we gave away in February. And they're like, can I uppot it from the 5-gallon container? And it would be too stressful to allow that fig cutting to rest in that same container for the duration of this year. So this here is a helpful lesson on moving those plants, applying these 5 lessons that we've just shared together, the Urban Gardener and the Ivory Organics channel, and offering this education to you. And thank you so very much for your help today.
Oh man, I really appreciate it, Charles. Thanks for having me over, man.
Of course. And I want to encourage all of you guys one more time to, again, click on that link that I shared with you at the beginning of this lesson at the Urban Gardener YouTube channel, as well as his Instagram page. Be sure to follow him, subscribe, hit that push bell notification, show your support, and meet also all of these amazing gardeners and experience.
Yeah, come along for our garden adventure on the Urban Gardener. It's real, you know, where I'm out trying to show the best I can when it comes to our home gardens and what we're doing, and kind of bring you along with how I do my gardening, all of that. But the real fun part is to get out and get on the road and see some of you guys like yourself and Kay Cottrell and John and all of them. And that's what we'll be doing on our channel too, is getting a lot of features with a lot of other great gardeners too.
For sure. And I look forward to hopefully celebrating and toasting and congratulating you again for your 10,000 mile marker.
I can't believe it.
And looking forward to celebrating that 100,000 hopefully within the next year or two.
Just around the corner, man.
Just around the corner. If you've enjoyed this lesson, be sure to give us that thumbs up and also share us with your gardening friends and family. And remember to keep on growing with Ivory Organics, and wishing you all happy gardening.